was 16, I thought the worst thing Craigslist could do to you was scam you out of money. That's what everyone warned you about, right? Fake listings, broken items, people wasting your time, and nobody ever warned me about the kind of ad that looks harmless or the kind that feels safe because it's posted in your own town, in your own backyard, where nothing bad ever happens. I grew up in a place called Millbrook, the kind of small town that has one high school, one grocery store, and the same families living on the same roads for generations. If something even mildly criminal happened, you'd hear about it at the gas station before you heard about it on the news. So, when I needed extra money that summer, I did what any bored, broke teenager does. I searched Craigslist. I wasn't expecting some dream job. Honestly, I didn't expect anything at all. It was more like curiosity, like digging through a junk drawer to see if there's anything useful in it. Then I saw an ad that immediately stood out. Yard help needed, $150, 2 to 3 hours cash. The location was listed as Millbrook, only a few miles from my house. That alone made it feel less risky. The town was so small you couldn't really hide in it. If someone tried something, the whole place would know by dinner time. I messaged the number. The guy replied within 10 minutes. His name was Harold. At least that's what he said. His messages were polite, proper punctuation, almost overly friendly. When I called him to confirm, his voice was soft and elderly, raspy like he'd been sick recently. He told me he was too old to do the work himself and that he really appreciated a young man willing to help. It sounded wholesome. He asked if I could come the next morning around 9. I said yes. Before I left, I told my mom exactly where I was going. I even showed her the address on my phone. She didn't love it, but she wasn't panicked either. I had a phone. I'd be gone only a couple hours. It was broad daylight, and again, this was Millbrook. Nothing ever happens in Millbrook. The neighborhood was on the edge of town where the streets stop being neighborhoods and start becoming woods. Not isolated, but quieter. Bigger yards, longer driveways, less traffic. His house sat at the end of one of those driveways, an older white farmhouse with peeling trim and a roof that sagged slightly like it was tired. The yard was overgrown, and the whole property had the look of a place that used to be loved and wasn't anymore. I parked and stepped out. The air smelled like wet dirt and cut grass. Birds chirped too loud. The quiet between sounds felt thick. The front door opened before I even reached the steps. Harold stood there holding the screen door open like he'd been watching through the window. He looked late 60s, maybe early 70s. Thin hair slicked back, yellow teeth, a face that might have looked normal if it didn't hold that fixed expression. Not a smile, more like a mask of friendliness. "You're right on time," he said. I nodded and tried to keep my posture confident. "Yes, sir. I'm here for the yard work." He stepped down onto the porch, slow and stiff like his joints hurt. He smelled faintly of cigarette smoke and something sour under it, like stale laundry that sat too long. He showed me what he needed. Leaves raked into bags, sticks and debris picked up, weeds pulled from the garden beds and the cracks in the driveway. It wasn't hard work, just annoying work. He told me he had everything I needed. He handed me gloves, a rake, several lawn bags, and a garbage can. Then he started talking. At first it was regular small talk. "What's your name again?" "How old are you?" "Do you go to the high school in town?" I answered politely. I wasn't suspicious yet. Old people ask questions. It's normal. But then the question shifted. Not suddenly, like flipping a switch, more like he slowly drifted into the wrong lane. "Do you have a girlfriend?" he asked. "No," I said. "How come?" I shrugged. "Just don't." He stared at me for a second too long. Then he asked something that made my stomach drop. It was personal. Too personal. Not Grandpa being awkward personal. The kind of question that doesn't accidentally come out of someone's mouth. The kind of question that means the thought was already living in their head. I didn't respond the way he wanted, and I gave him a short answer. No details, no laughs, no nervous politeness, and then I said, "I should probably get started. I have to be home by a certain time." His expression changed. The fake friendliness collapsed, and underneath it I saw something sharp, anger, and worse, embarrassment, like I had disrespected him by not playing along. He gave me a stiff nod, turned around, and went back inside without another word. I stood there holding a rake, feeling that sick dread you get when you realize you've walked into the wrong situation. I should have left. I know that now, but at 16, leaving felt complicated. I didn't want to seem dramatic. I didn't want to admit I'd put myself in danger. I didn't want to go home empty-handed and explain to my mom why I couldn't even do a simple job. And I wanted the money, so I started working. The first 15 minutes were normal enough. I raked leaves into piles, stuffed them into bags, dragged debris into the garbage can. Then I noticed him watching me through the living room window. At first I told myself it was harmless. Maybe he was just keeping an eye on his property, but it didn't stop. Every time I moved around the house, I'd catch him in a different window. Kitchen, living room, side room, even upstairs once, always watching. And sometimes he had that same weird smile on his face. Not friendly, not happy, more like satisfied, like a man watching something he thinks belongs to him. It started to feel like the yard wasn't the job at all. Like the yard work was just an excuse to get me there. I worked faster. My heart raced even when my body was doing normal movements. I kept checking my phone in my pocket just to reassure myself it was there. It started to feel like the yard wasn't the job at all. Like the yard work was just an excuse to get me there. I worked faster. My heart raced even when my body was doing normal movements. I kept checking my phone in my pocket just to reassure myself it was there. By the time I finished, just under 2 hours, I was sweating, even though the air was cool. I gathered the tools and set them neatly on his porch. Then I knocked. The door opened immediately again. Harold stared at me like he'd been standing behind it waiting. "I'm all done," I said. He looked past me at the yard, didn't even nod. Then he reached into his pocket and handed me cash. I glanced at it. $120. I blinked. It was supposed to be $150. His eyes narrowed, his voice dropped. "Get off my property." For a second, I thought I misheard him. "I'm sorry?" I said, confused. His face twisted, and then he exploded. "Get out!" he screamed, suddenly loud enough that my whole body jolted. "Get the hell away from my house!" The way he yelled didn't match the situation. It was too intense, too personal. Like I'd done something to him. I didn't argue. I didn't ask again about the money. I didn't say another word. I just turned and walked, then quickly jogged toward my car. Behind me, he kept yelling. The words blurred together until one sentence cut through clearly. "I'll see you soon!" My hand slipped on the car handle because I was shaking. I got inside, locked the doors, and started the engine. That should have been the end. But it wasn't. As I pulled out of the driveway, Harold shouted one more thing, something that made my skin go ice cold. He yelled my address, my real address. The one I hadn't told him, the one he should not have known. I drove home in a panic, crying so hard I could barely see. I checked my mirrors constantly, convinced his car would appear behind me at any second. When I got home, I ran inside and went straight to my room. I didn't tell my parents, and I told myself if I stayed quiet, it would go away. That night I didn't sleep. I just laid there listening to the house settle, staring at the ceiling, replaying the way he watched me through the windows. And then, around 1:30 a.m., I heard it. A car door closing, quietly, like someone trying not to wake anyone. My heart stopped. I crawled to the window and peeled back the curtain. A car sat at the curb. Same make, same color, same shape I'd seen in Harold's driveway. And there he was, standing near it in the dark, facing my house, not walking up. Just standing, like he was waiting for me to look. That's when the fear finally snapped into action. I ran straight into my parents' room, screaming. My dad bolted up like a soldier, grabbed his shotgun from the closet, and stomped down the hallway without even putting shoes on. He yanked the front door open and shouted into the night with a voice I didn't know he had. The man outside backed away immediately, got into his car, and took off. Tires squealed, the taillights disappeared, and we called the police. They took it seriously, because this is a small town and this kind of thing doesn't happen without everybody hearing about it. Harold was arrested not long after. They told us harassment, threats, and more than that, things they didn't want to explain to a kid. That was over 3 years ago. I still live in the same house, and to this day, I don't like being home alone at night, because sometimes, when the street is quiet and the wind hits the right way, I swear I can still hear that man's voice behind me, snarling through the darkness. I'll see you soon.